Welcome back to my YouTube channel, but if you're new here, my name is Brittany and I'm a Chicago-based lifestyle content creator. So if you haven't been following this series since the beginning of the year and watched any of my previous favorites videos, I'm going to share my favorite products, favorite music, favorite movies, TV, just basically all the things that I've been loving this month. So without further ado, let's get started and jump into my favorite product, or my favorite category as always, which is beauty. So it's April. I don't know if I already said that. And I feel like April is kind of like a in-betweener season of moving. I mean, it's literally is spring, but moving from the winter, cold, dry months into summer, hot, sweaty months. I feel like these two products I'm going to share are very emblematic of that. Okay, so this first product is something I think my friend Leah actually might have recommended this to me, or I don't know where I got this rec from, and I have been really loving it since then. So it's the Youth to the People. What is the full title of this? Hydrate and Glow Dream Body Butter. So it's a body butter, like a lotion basically. If you know me, you know that I love lotions. I like being moisturized in general. Nobody wants to be looking dry, ashy, and flaky. And I'm passionate about lotions as well, because now I'm about to really get into why I love this one. But this is a very, I don't know, it's a body butter, so it's a little thicker than your everyday moisturizer type of body moisturizer, but it's not too thick and oily or greasy. It's really nice to put on after a shower, especially at nighttime after a shower. If I put my robe on, I feel like I'm literally at a spa. It smells really good. It's very fresh. I don't know, does it say? Oh yeah, it is. Scent. Free to Dream, that's the name of the scent. So it's a yuzu, green tea, and blonde wood. So yeah, I feel like it does smell very woodsy, fresh, and natural, but it's it just smells really, really good. And it just goes on so evenly. I'm getting close to, I think I bought this in February, and I feel like I'm already getting close to the bottom of it. So like I said, I've really been getting deep into this for the past month or so. I will definitely be rebuying this. I have a couple other lotions that I need to get through before I rebuy it. As always, I have a few too many products, but I like Youth to the People. All of the other, I've tried many other products from them. I think I probably even talked about some in other favorites videos too, but I'm very much into this Dream body butter. That's something I feel that's good for nourishing and repairing, especially if you have dry skin, which again, I feel this happens a lot of time in winter. But then I just went on vacation to Jamaica a month or so ago, which I actually have a vlog that I shared on my channel about that. And even coming back from that, just from being in, I wasn't quite sunburned, but sun scarred, I don't know what the right word is, but my skin was so dry for at least 2 weeks that I was literally lathering on this body butter every day. So I mean, it's still good to use, I feel in the summer months, especially as you're really out and if you're going to the beach a lot, out in the sun or in the water, and your skin's just drying up. So that's my first product that I'm sharing for this month. My second one is something I feel that'll, I use this again on my vacation when I went to Jamaica, and I feel I'll be using this a lot in the summer while I'm spending a lot of time outside, just going to events and stuff like that. Events, who am I? But it's the Supergoop, what is this called? The Protectant. So the Protectant Daily SPF Tint. So it's SPF 50. And I think this actually just came out in maybe February. I feel it's, or it was reformulated and relaunched in February, I want to say. And I really I used it for the first time this past month when I went on vacation, and I used it almost every day, when I was getting ready for the day. And I think I even did reapply it, or I reapplied regular sunscreen on top of it throughout the day. But it's a really, I mean, this color looks very light as compared to my complexion. And what color is this? Oh, 46N, but it actually goes on, I feel pretty, the color match is pretty good. So I'll put a little bit on. So it does look pretty light, but it pretty much just blends right in. My hands are a little dry, but anyway, I feel it was nice to wear if you're doing something where you're outside all day, you are going to be outside and in the sun, but you maybe don't want to put makeup on top of your sunscreen, because it is an all-in-one. You just want to make sure you're obviously using enough of it, in terms of the amount of sunscreen that you need to be using throughout the day. So 2 full fingers is like 2 swipes on your finger is usually what I try to do. But it was just nice because it was a little bit blurring, so it was not quite I had a skin tint on, makeup on. It's a little bit of a skin tint, but also I obviously had sun protection in there too. And I feel you could if you wore it and we're gonna go to a festival or something like that, you could just put blush or whatever on top of it, and it would wear a normal makeup, but still it would be giving you that SPF 50. So this is something I just recently used, and I feel this is gonna be pretty core in my like makeup and like everyday routine throughout the summer. All right, so moving into, I guess, more of the wellness category. So I've talked about before on my channel how sometimes I have a hard time, I'll go through these periods where I have a hard time with sleeping. It's like I will just either have a hard time falling asleep, or it's like I have a hard time staying asleep. Like I'll wake up in the middle of the night and then not go back to sleep. But I got this magnesium spray, this aloe, what is the actual name of this? Why don't I know the names of anything? It's the Aloe Glow System Magnesium Spray. I got this in my FabFitFun box, my winter FabFitFun box, and I've been liking it a lot. As you can tell, I've used like a decent amount of it already. And I usually just spray, like, I want to say about, okay, I was going a little overboard at first just because I didn't really know how to use it. And I feel like I was spraying it like a body mist. I was like, like doing like, I'm not even kidding, probably like 7 to 8 sprays. You really just need a couple to do a couple. So I usually do like maybe 2 to 3 sprays like on my chest before I go to like right before I get into bed. Which I think is how that's basically like how they say to use it to like spray onto skin and massage in, focusing on areas of tension or fatigue. So I just did my chest because that's like where, when you read about magnesium sprays, they say to spray there, or on your feet actually too. And it says like do that before savasana, or anytime for recovery or relaxation. So like I'm just doing it at night to try to help myself go to sleep, and I do feel like it's working. I mean, it has helped me. So I've been in a pretty good routine of using it just about every night for the past like month or so, and I do feel like I'm sleeping really soundly, like really not waking up at all at night, and then feeling pretty well rested when I wake up. So this is something that I would definitely recommend. Okay, so that's all of the like product focused things that I'm going to share this month. Now moving into like, we'll say the entertainment realm. So starting with music, my favorite album of the month, I feel like was like a no-brainer if you know me at all, and that is Cowboy Carter. Like this was, I mean, this technically came out at the very end of March, like March 29th. It's actually while I was on vacation, so I feel like I didn't really like really get into it until April, like a couple days later when I was back. But I really am loving, you can see my fingerprints a little bit on this, but really loving this album. I feel like, I mean, I know that like Lemonade is considered Beyonce's magnum opus, but I'm really curious of like at the end of this like 3-act series, because this is like act 2 in like a 3-act series that she talked about like when Renaissance first came out, that this whole project was going to be basically 3 different albums or acts. And so I'm very curious of like when act 3 comes out, will this now be Beyonce's magnum opus, which I think it will, just because like they're all of like Renaissance took the cake as my favorite Beyonce album, which I just feel like this album is so good. I mean, I really have been enjoying it for so many reasons. So 4 was my favorite Beyonce album up until Renaissance, and I feel like Renaissance became my number 1, but 4 was definitely Beyonce's, like, in my opinion, best best album vocally, and it didn't really seem like there was a way to top that, but like, what do I know about Beyonce? But like Love on Top, I feel like it's a perfect example of that. Like, and I Care and 1+1, like those songs like vocally are so good. But then when I heard this, I was like, oh, she like blew those songs out of the water. Like that sounds like Child's Play now compared to this. And it's just literally from the album opener of American Requiem. It was so, it's hard to like, it's a very hard album to not listen to, in my opinion, the whole thing from start to finish. Like, it's like when I started, I'm like, okay, well, I gotta finish it. Like, I can't, like, even sometimes when I'm like, oh, I just wanna listen, maybe I wanna listen to just Tyrant, but I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna listen to Tyrant, then I may as well listen to like Two Hands to Heaven, and then I may as well actually just start at Riverdance and listen from there all the way up until the end of the album, because I need to then listen to Sweet Honey Buckin' and Amen. And then at that point, why not just start it back from the beginning? Again, since Amen kind of loops right back into American Requiem. But it's also just very cool in the sense of like, I feel like besides just sounding like a good, like by being an album that like sounds good and is really enjoyable to listen to, just the whole, the cultural and historical impact of this album, similar to like a Lemonade is, and even Renaissance too, is very cool. Like, it feels like very impactful to like, because obviously like Beyonce said, this is not a country album, it's a Beyonce album, but it is very much country inspired. But I feel like I'm not someone that necessarily, I don't listen to country music in this day and age because it doesn't feel like a place that like I would be welcomed to like listen to. Like, I don't think I would be welcome in a space of like listening to country music. But like there are some older like 90s and 2000s country songs that I do enjoy. But when, I mean, you've got people like Morgan Wallen and people like that, like that's just like not a space where I feel like, oh, I would be welcome to like, I very much feel like go where you're wanted. But it's when you really learn about like the history of country music, Black people are such a core part of that, but it is really unfortunate. I mean, this isn't just the case in country music, but in so many other facets of life too, that like Black people have been stripped away and removed from that. And it's like, well, no, like this, we are a very core part of this. And like, I think that's kind of what this album is a reminder of. Like Linda Martell is featured on this, and she was the first Black country singer to ever sing at the Grand Ole Opry, but she was pushed out of the country music industry because she wasn't welcome and because of racism. So like she is like a core part of the album. And there are a lot of other people, like new, like other Black country artists that I have discovered because of this, that now I'm a big fan of, like Shabuzi, Brittany Howard. Like it's just very cool to listen to like the story of the album. Like if you listen to it starting with like American Requiem and knowing like, I mean, it's literally like the death of America. It's pretty much like what it's talking about. And then going into like Blackbird, which is like was written about like the civil rights movement, like a cover of Blackbird being sung by all of these female Black singers. It's just it's like a very cool feeling. And then when you get into like, I mean, I love me some Miley Cyrus. I feel like people hate on Hannah Montana, but I love Miley Cyrus. She's a really, really good voice. And that Two Most Wanted track with Beyonce and Miley Cyrus, like I never thought that I needed, like that wasn't something I ever thought about, like, oh, Beyonce and Miley Cyrus doing a duet. But then as soon as I heard it, I was like, oh, we needed this. Like it just sounds so good and soulful and warm, and like it feels like a big hug kind of. And I don't really love Post Malone. Like I'm not a hater, but he's not someone's music that like I like go out of my way to like listen to. But I really like the track with him on it too. It's like it's a very fun, sexy kind of song, I guess you could say. So yeah, I've really been enjoying like listening to this album. It's pretty much been on repeat, I feel like, since it came out. Like also like I'm very much into the Western vibe lately. Like I discovered some things in my closet that I didn't realize I had, in like a like suede crop jacket with some fringe on the sleeves. I was like, when did I buy this? It's like, but it's old. So it's like I've been knowing. And then I recently got some cowboy boots. So the country vibe is very much in, or the Western vibe, I should say, is very much in. So, I mean, if you haven't listened to this album, I would definitely recommend it. It's I feel like it feels like a very complete experience if you listen to it from start to finish. Like you really get to hear the story unfold. So would recommend. All right, so that was my favorite album, or my favorite music of the month. Moving into, okay, so my favorite book of the month, which I actually don't always share a book because I'm not always reading one, or not one that I like enjoy enough to be talking about, which that sounds bad, but I am not done with this book. I'm kind of right in the middle of it. I was literally just listening to it right before this, but I have been listening to More Than Enough by Elaine Welteroth, and it's an autobiography basically, but it's a really good book, I feel like, about identity, that, and like almost like coming of age, that I think, I mean, she writes it through the lens of being biracial in America and like also a woman, and like what that looks like navigating through the world, but not in like a way that it's like that's the core focus. It is the core focus of the book, but at the same time it's like it's about identity and learning about who you are and like who you want to be and how you show up in the world. At least that's what I've gotten from it so far, and I'm really enjoying listening to it. I also just, until I started this book, I did not realize that Elaine Welteroth is only 2 years older than I am. I just thought she was so much older because she's so well established and so like she's done so much throughout her life, that I was like, I assumed she was like in her 40s, like late 40s even. But no, she was born in 1986, so she's literally only 2 years older than I am. Also feels very nostalgic, or it feels very like it feels very relatable in a lot of ways, especially the chapter that I'm on right now, because she's talking about like her post-grad experience, and she graduated from college in 2008. I graduated in 2010, and just like going back to that place of like, well, she's talking about like Barack Obama getting elected, and like so many little parts of life that you forget about, that like are a big experience of your 20s, especially I feel like being in your 20s at that period of time, that it's like, oh yeah, like I forgot about that. Like at this point, a lot of that was almost 20 years ago. So just like thinking about the world, how so much has changed, I feel like, in the world, but even when you think about yourself as a person, like especially if you're in your 30s or 40s, how much of you has changed since like you were like coming of age. It's a really good, well, I'm listening to it, so I'm gonna say a really good listen, but I feel like it's a very good read. And I think, again, it's something I think that could be very relatable to really anyone in terms of like your identity and really discovering who you are. And it's just like fun to listen to too. Like it's like people like this, when they write books, I'm like, you've lived so much life that like you have to like live so much life to like write a book about yourself that it's interesting and not just like, oh, I did this, I did this, I did this. But so she just like, I don't know, it's a really interesting read. So that's something I would definitely recommend to anyone, I think especially women, to read. Yes, again, she's talking about like becoming or like stepping into yourself in the work world, especially, and how to like get what you want, and like you are more than enough, like ask for what you want. So in work, but I think also in life, because she's talking about a little bit right now about like relationships too. So would definitely recommend that book. Okay, now moving into TV. So I literally just finished this show over the weekend. I started and finished it over the weekend. But my show, or my TV show of the month, is Baby Reindeer on Netflix. It's a limited series. It is, I want to say it's 8, maybe 10 episodes. They're all pretty short. The longest one I think is maybe 30 minutes. And it is, I don't want to like just go into too much detail to give, so I don't want to give it away, but I think you would know this anyway from like the synopsis, that it is about a man who, you think it's a stalker drama, that's like the gist of it, but it's actually about so much more than that. And I feel like that's also a little bit about identity too. And I didn't realize this until after I'd finished the series, but the man, it's all based on a true story, which that is the craziest thing to continue, like to keep thinking about as you're watching this, because it's all factual. Like, I mean, there's some things that have been changed for TV, like people's names might have been changed. I think maybe the last episode, that's the only part that might be fiction. But otherwise, this all happened to someone, and it actually is like the main character, the actor that's playing him, this happened to him. Like this is his story, and he turned it into, I think, a play or something, or maybe he just like wrote it as a play at first, whatever. He wrote it in some regard, and now it is this like limited series on Netflix, and it's just so, it's really graphic, and so, like there's a couple episodes that are very graphic and that are about sexual assault in a way that like I don't know anyone that I know of, at least, that has been sexually assaulted like that. And I've never heard anyone describe what that feels like and like seen it play out on TV before. And I mean, it's not explicit, like graphic in a way that you see someone, like, there's a lot that you don't see, but like you see just enough to be able to piece together what's happening, and just like the emotional toll that like that takes on a person. I've just never seen that kind of played out on a TV show or movie or anything really before. So, and just how things like events like that affect, like if someone abuses someone, that abuser obviously affects their victim, but then it's a ripple effect to every single person in their life in all of those relationships too. And so it was, I mean, I'm making it sound very dark, which it is, but it's also a dark comedy at the same time. So kind of like a Beef type of show, I feel like, where it's like this is about something very dark and twisted, but it's also kind of funny too. It's a comedy at the same time. So I really enjoyed it. Like I rarely watch shows like in a couple days like that. Like I don't usually love to like binge shows, but that I did have to take a break after like the episode, I think it's episode 4, which is like one of the most graphic episodes. I did stop watching it for like maybe a day or so, but then I came back to it and was like, okay, I need to see like how this all shapes up. So that is a show that I would definitely recommend checking out if you haven't already. All right, and then rounding out my favorites, sharing my favorite movies of the month. So I actually have 2 movies I'm going to share. One is a movie, like a Netflix movie, so it was like straight to Netflix, never in theaters, and then one is one that was in theaters. So the first one is the Netflix original movie, or whatever they call them, original film, Shirley, which is about Shirley Chisholm, who was the first Black woman elected to like the US Congress. She might have been the first woman actually too, not just Black woman, like she was the first Black woman elected to Congress. I can say that confidently, in 1970 something. And I knew who Shirley Chisholm was in terms of like a figure, but I realized as I was watching this, I didn't know much about her actual life and like how she got to be in Congress and like kind of the impact that she made there. Like I just knew who she was as like the first Black woman in Congress, but most importantly, she was the first Black candidate for president by a major like political party. So she ran for president on the Democratic ticket, and like actually made it pretty far, which especially in the 70s, that is a huge feat, because she was a school teacher from Brooklyn that basically just became a congresswoman. And it's not like she had all this like large political power and backing, which is what we see now for most presidential candidates. Like they're people who have been in politics or some shape or form for years. And she wasn't like that at all. And she had no money. Like she was financing everything like herself or from donations. And but at the same time too, she was a woman, like in the 70s, being an independent woman was like not a real thing in terms of like it wasn't, there wasn't a precedent set for that. So like even her relationship with her husband seemed strained because she was so sure of herself and knew what she wanted to do, and that just wasn't the norm at the time. So I don't know, it's a really good movie to watch. Regina King, I feel like, did a really good job of portraying her, and I just think it was such an interesting movie to watch. Like I started watching it on a plane, and then I just didn't like it was still going on by the time my flight ended. So when I got home, I think either that night or like first thing the next morning, I finished watching it because I just really wanted to see how it ended. And it was really good. And I feel like it's a very important part of history that I feel like I know a lot about history, and I didn't know much about Shirley Chisholm. I don't think it's a stretch to say that a lot of people don't know about. So I would definitely recommend checking it out if you have not already. We also have a co-host with us now. Rumi has decided to join the video. But anyway, the second movie that I'm sharing for the month is the one that I mentioned I saw in theaters, and that is the movie Civil War. So this movie is about literally a civil war taking place in the United States, so it'd be like our second Civil War. It's starring Kristen Dunst, and like she's the main character, and I honestly have not really seen Kristen Dunst. Kirsten Dunst. Why am I now suddenly thinking like, do I not know her name? I haven't seen her in anything since that I can remember, since she was Torrance and Bring It On. I mean, I love Bring It On and I love Kirsten Dunst. It is Kirsten Dunst. Okay, why was I saying Kirsten? Whatever I was saying. But I had never really seen her in this serious of a role before. And I mean, was great. But the movie itself, I really liked it. I didn't read any reviews before I went to go see it, and I was reading a lot of reviews after, and it's really interesting. It has very, very mixed reviews, at least as of the last time I checked. And I think it's a little bit of like, not to go into this too deep, but I really think people are becoming media illiterate, especially in the United States, of where like no one knows how to like read between the lines. People need things like, it feels like more and more in media, it's very binary. Everything has to be either one or the other. Like no, it feels like people are having a harder time actually critically thinking about what something could be about. And I feel like that's in regards to anything. But in terms of like this movie, because people, like what I'm reading is people are like, well, we don't know who's on the good side or the bad side. That's literally not the point of the movie, because that's not the point of war. War is war, and it is devastating no matter who's in the right or not, because like who is in the right when it comes to war and like people dying. And also, since this movie is shot from the perspective, like the whole perspective of the movie is through the eyes of journalists, when in that regard, journalists, and I kind of think it was like an indictment on American journalists personally. I don't know if that's how how they intended to make it, but journalists like are supposed to be impartial. Like, so it's not like they're who's the good guy, who's the bad guy. They're just trying to get the story, get the shot, whatever it is. So that I think is like something interesting to me. I enjoyed the movie. It was really it felt very like troubling. Like when I left it, I felt like when I walked out of the theater, I felt very anxious, because I was like, it was like a hard watch in a lot of ways, because it was really intense. And like I think the reason, like as I was thinking about it, why it felt like such a hard watch is because like most war movies that you watch, like I mean like Black Hawk Down, Pearl Harbor, all of the like Saving Private Ryan, those are about wars that have already happened, so you know how they end, you know how everything like shakes out. But like this is a war that has not happened, and it felt so realistic in the way that it was like played, in my opinion, again, the way it was played out on the screen. And besides like Independence Day or movies like that are I think a lot more far-fetched, I've never really like seeing the images of like war playing out in America on like, that's not something that's ever happened in like modern day America, that's happened in reality. And as Americans, we are very we have a very privileged viewpoint, I feel like, of war and conflict, because none of it happens to us, happening somewhere else, and like we're hearing about it, which is kind of, I think, a little bit of the perspective of the journalists in this, is that like they're used to reporting on things outside of the United States. Like Kirsten Dunst's character even says, because she's been a war reporter for like years, at one point in the movie she says like, I thought that every time I was sending a photo home, it was like a warning. It was a warning to not do this, not let this happen here. And like that's actually not how it played out. So you do see a little bit of like, you can tell that the president who is depicted as the president in this is a fascist. You can see, like, because he is like killing journalists, like, they're like just stopping the the people from having a lot of autonomy. And so like that's one thing that is very clear, but the country is split up into like factions. I want to say there's like 3 different sides, I guess you could say, but you don't really know who, like, what the motivations are of each of those sides. You're just, again, seeing it play through the eyes of the journalists. And again, when I said it, I feel like it's a little bit of an indictment on Western journalists, is you kind of see how ruthless they are in terms of like getting the shot. Like I said, they don't care about anything but like getting the story by any means necessary. And obviously, like, we need to see, like, we need to know what's going on. But again, I think it's probably because a lot of Western journalists are reporting on things that like they're not necessarily going to be personally impacted by. It's really easy to just be like, oh, well, this person, like, let's just like take in the information rather than thinking about it from like a what is this doing to the people kind of perspective. And as I was like watching the movie, like what I kept thinking about were a lot of the like Palestinian journalists that we're seeing on social media, like Motaz and Bisan and people like that, and how different their style, I guess you could say, of reporting is, because they're reporting on something that is literally impacting them in their lives. Like, they are a part of the story, but they're also reporting on it at the same time. Whereas if you're a journalist coming from outside to like in, the emotional or like personal part of it is removed. So I don't know, it's just an interesting, it was just like like all of these thoughts were just, I don't know what any of that means, but these were just all thoughts that I kind of like had while I was watching it. So it was also just like the way it was shot was very cool. Like, it was the ending sequence, that's where I was like, I gotta get out of here, I'm stressed, because it was just so like I've just never, and like I said, I've watched a decent amount of war movies before, and maybe because I haven't seen many of them in theaters, but I've never really seen, I never have felt like I was literally in the middle of like what was happening, and that's how it like felt in this. And I really didn't know how it was going to actually turn out at the very end. So I thought it was good. I feel like there are a lot of really mixed reviews. Would recommend checking it out. I don't know how much longer it's going to be in theaters, or I guess it just came out a few weeks ago, so it'll probably be in theaters for a little while. But those are all my favorite things from April. Always welcome to recs in terms of like shows, products, whatever. I think I've said this last month, this is like a fun series that I'm enjoying doing and creating for my channel. But if you've made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe if you want to see more content from me, and I'll see you on the next one.